In this lesson, I'll be going over how I compiled the photos of the Escazú comic into completed pages. The goal of this task was to keep the layout similar, but obviously make a few changes for the new edition. As you can see in comparison, this is what the first edition of the comic book looked like. In order to do this, the best program I can think of to use was Canva. Canva is a free website where you can make a variety of images like Instagram posts, presentations, posters, and more. So as you can see, there are a variety of different formats that you can choose from depending on what project you're creating. If you click here at More, you can see every single type of format that is available. For this project, I chose the ebook template. When you click on it, you can create a blank template. But while you're here editing, you are able to select a pre-made template to base your project off of if need be. The reason why I chose the ebook template was to ensure that the dimensions of the image itself were as close to a normal physical size book as possible. So in order to begin the project, you'll want to upload any images that you're going to be needing for your project. So if you go here to the upload section, this is where you can upload any photos, videos, audio, or images that you'll be needing. So as you can see from my past work working on the comic book, a lot of the images are already here uploaded. In my instance, I created every single page individually as a new project. But if you don't need to do that, or you don't want to do that, you can click on Add Page, and this allows you to keep adding pages, and you can have essentially an entire document once you download it of every single page that you make. Much like what I stated in the previous lesson, the best thing to do with an unfamiliar program is to play around with it. So Canva has a lot of different features. There are some features that I don't even fully know about. Obviously, there are different tips that you can Google and other YouTube videos that you can look up if you need something very technical. But for the most part, it is pretty straightforward in terms of laying down different graphics, charts, text, whatever you need depending on what you're making. So to start, if you go to the element section, you can see all the different graphics and other features that you can add to your project. So as you can see, there are different shapes that you can add, lines, certain graphics. You can use AI to create an image that you might want to add. There are animated stickers. There are stock photos. There are also videos depending on what you need or what you're making, as well as audio. You can also add different charts and graphs and tables. As well, when you place these, you are able to adjust the numbers so that it represents whatever you were discussing. You can also add frames. So for these, when you place them, you can change the image in here and it'll automatically make it this size and shape. As well, at the bottom, there are different graphics here that are sorted into these types of styles or certain topics. So just as an example, I will play around with these ones. So you can just click on it and it'll paste it into an automatic size. And as you can see, you can just click and drag and resize it however you'd like. You are also able to freely place it anywhere on the page. As you can see, there are different types of grid lines that kind of pop up, and these are to help you with centering whatever you're placing or to keep it within the margins. As well, as you can see up here at the top, when you click on the image, you are able to change the colors. Some graphics that you select in place, you're actually not able to do this, meanwhile others you are. So if you really need to pick a color scheme, you want to make sure that whatever you're placing on your project, you are able to change the color to fit that color scheme. But if it doesn't matter that much, then by all means, put whatever you need to put. As you can see here, you can change the transparency, if you need to copy anything, or if you need to lock the image down. So if you do that, that means you can't move it anywhere else. As well, you can add a border. So as you can see, there's a little border around the image that pops up. You can also flip it, so upside down, other way. Or you can crop it if need be, and you can only do part of the image. As well, you are able to click on the background of the template itself, and from there you are able to change the background color. So as you can see, automatically, based on what you have already on the template, it can generate a color scheme for your project. So because of the sticker, it's suggesting these colors that are automatically in the picture. Or you can choose a gradient like this one, or you can just choose a full color like that. And it's entirely up to you. Since it was required of me to make a new set of pages for the comic book based on the ones that already exist, the easiest way for me to establish how to start these new pages was to analyze the previous version. So, obviously, the main components that I needed to assemble the book were the photos that were already edited, different types of speech bubbles. So as you can see, this one is a rectangle, while these ones have rounded edges. As well, on many of the other pages, you have this little arrow that connects it to a speaker. There's also a clear comic book-like font that's easily readable. There's also a thin border on all of the photos. And as you can see, there's a textured background. So in my instance, I did look at the different types of textures that are available on Canva. I even looked at what was available on something like GIMP. I even searched for stock images on Google, but none of the textured photos that I found really looked good. So I settled on just a plain colored background. So as I said before, if you click on the template, you can change the color. So in terms of choosing a background color for all of these pages, I wanted something that wasn't too contrasting or too bright, something that was very easy on the eyes because you wanted to be able to focus on everything else that was happening on the page. So in terms of selecting a color, I wanted to keep in mind that it should be light. So I do believe I played around with looking at like a mint color, light green, light blues, but I found that it didn't really look the way that I wanted it to. It didn't really do what I needed it to do to be just a simple background color. So I ended up choosing just a really light creamy color, kind of like this, maybe a little bit darker, but something that it was just a little bit off-white so that it wasn't so contrasting compared to the photos that were all so colorful. And then you have the black and white text. This one helps it look a little bit more cohesive, and obviously when you're reading pages with all these colored images, it is better on the eyes in general. As I mentioned at the beginning of this lesson, I did create each page separately just because it helped me kind of reorient myself for each new layout. I didn't want every single page to look the same, and I think if I kept looking back between the ones that I had made previously as well as looking at the previous version, I would have made many copies of the same exact page layout, and I didn't want that. So I kind of just helped reset my mind and made each page separate. Obviously, as you can see here, I did create a full version of it with all 47 pages. So just to show you exactly what elements I added to the template in order to create the page. I'll just show you here. So as you can see, these are the edited photos that I made based off of these photographs. And there are speech bubbles. So looking through all of the different text that's here and available on Canva, there are a few that you need to pay for. So it's from the premium version of Canva. But the easiest way to find the right font, especially for something like a comic book, is to literally just search in comic. So obviously here are all the different types of comic-like fonts that Canva offers. The majority of them are free. And the one that was closest to the previous version was this one that I selected called Comica. So as you can see here, the speech bubble is actually two different elements. So that's just the big triangle. The reason why I did this was because there wasn't actually a good looking speech bubble, nor was there one where I could change where the arrow was pointing. So as you can see, I needed it in several different directions. So here, there, as well, I needed it to connect different speech bubbles in case a certain part of the text related to a different image that I placed. So that's the reason why I did that. And obviously I experimented with different graphics that you could put. So maybe just a single arrow that went like this, or different size triangle, different shape triangle, rectangles, anything that could indicate who's talking in which photo. Obviously I just settled on a normal triangle shape, and what I did here was I made sure that you were able to change the inside color as well as the border color. So I added the border here with this button. This is the inside color, so that's white, and then because I added a border, I was able to change the border color, and that made it black, so there it matches. And because this was a normal triangle, I could just change the shape of it and the length of it, and from there I can adjust how it looks. So for example, if the speech bubble is really big, I'll have to change the size of it. If it's really close to someone's face like it is here, then I can make it skinnier and closer. As well, this text box here, I believe it is just a normal rectangle. Many of the rectangles you are able to use as just a text box, or if need be, you can just use it as a shape that you add. So for example, I believe the border that I added here is like that. Yes, so I'm able to type in it, as you can see. But what I just did was made it all black, and then I always added whatever photo I was using in the middle of it, and that created the border. I found that this was just an easier way to add borders to all of the photos instead of going back and having to edit every single photo all over again. This just made it very quick and easy. I could just plop them wherever I wanted. It helped kind of preemptively create a layout for each page, and then I could change it around depending on what I was adding, what pictures I was using, things like that, and then I can change around the black boxes, and then once I was confident, I would add in all the photos that I needed for that specific page. I should mention that the layout that I made for each page was not entirely random. I did use a lot of the same pictures for the same boxes of text on the pages that I made, and that was only because it just made it a little bit easier in terms of finding the right flow and kind of helped start the page. But there were times when I would kind of deviate, choose a different photo that I thought would be better. I tried to put in a lot more nature photos that were available because the emphasis is on the nature and the environment. So as I said, you can search for different elements, or you can use this section at the top here if there are certain things that you are looking for. So for example, if you need anything like this, um, you can find it. Usually the graphics are where everything is, so you have different ones that are moving if you're creating a moving image. So for example, if you're posting it online somewhere, or you can just have still graphics like this. And then if you need something like arrows or lines that connect two images together, you can adjust the length, the thickness of these lines, dots, where they go, what they connect to, essentially everything. It's a free-for-all platform, and you can create anything that you want in terms of images. And obviously, like I said before, I did have to recreate a speech bubble. In terms of looking for speech bubbles, this was one of the easiest ones that I can find. But again, like I said, you can't move the arrow, and that was vital in terms of creating the pages, because I had to make sure that the arrow was pointing to the right person or connecting different speech bubbles. And if I couldn't do that, then it would have kind of not given it that right comic book kind of look. So I didn't use a speech bubble like this, or the square one that's here. As well as if you go into text here, you can see that there's like these pre-made kind of fonts that are available depending on what kind of image you're creating. As well, if you go up, you can see that there's different default styles. So subheading, body text, heading. When you add text, there is this effects section. So you can add outline to the text. You can make it glowing. You can have the shadow here. And obviously, as you can see, you can change the effect of it, how much you see of that effect on the text itself. You can also curve the text if you need to, and you can rotate it using that arrow at the bottom, and you can see the degree there. So if you want it completely straight, then you'll want it back at 0 degrees. So last but not least, I did create a cover for the book using Canva as well. So I use the same template, which is the blank ebook template, and I used existing images from Margarita and Julia that show cultural significance. So as you can see, this is the thatched roof that they create in the region. And if you zoom in, there are culturally significant tattoo patterns that I added along the edge here to create this kind of frame. And I use the same font that I had used throughout the text bubbles as well. So in order to do something like this, what I did was edit the photo in the same style that I had for all the other images in the comic book. So as you can see with this rectangle here, the text box are actually two separate things. So the background rectangle is just there. And as you can see, it is kind of transparent, but not. So if you go to this button up here, that is where the transparency is. So when you set it to 0, it becomes fully transparent. And obviously, as you can see, you can't read the text at all. But when you make it completely opaque, it doesn't look that good. So that is why I selected it to be somewhat transparent, so that the text is readable, but also you can still a little bit see the background there. And that's what I did at the top as well. In terms of adding the tattoos along the edges here, these were actually their own separate images, and using GIMP, I just created a transparent background and then uploaded each image here, and I just connected them in the pattern. So as you can see, each one is its own little picture, essentially, and I just kept copying and pasting it and connecting them to create what looks like loops. I also created another cover just so that Margarita and Julia could choose which one they liked the best. So as you can see, it's essentially the same thing, just a little bit different. So in the background here, it's weaving that is culturally significant. And again, this is Margarita and Julia's photo that I edited using Pixar.com in the same way that I edited everything else. As well, I kind of copied from the previous cover the same method of using this semi-transparent box just so you can read the text better and so that it stands out. And again, I reused the tattoo images here, but I layered them differently so that it just looks slightly different than the other one. So instead of inside the box, it's right on the edge here. As well, the text here is bigger, so it looks a lot less cramped in comparison. So that is essentially everything that I did on Canva and how I used it in order to create these pages. I think the best way to think about Canva, especially if you're making something like this, is to think of it as just a digital way of scrapbooking or creating a collage, because you're essentially working with a blank page and you have to assemble all of these different elements together to create this one whole image. As well, Canva has a lot of different graphics and different elements like these boxes and speech bubbles and different shapes and arrows and everything like that, as I showed. So again, you have a lot of creative free reign for whatever you're making. As I said as well, it does require a lot of just fooling around with the program, and obviously there's a lot of trial and error. I know that when I was going through how to create these pages, I had to fix them and go over them multiple times until I was satisfied with the way that I was creating them, because there's so many different things that you can do on Canva that you kind of need to experiment before you find the right aesthetic, essentially, for your project. In the next video lesson, I will be done with the Escazú comic, and I'll be moving on to talking about the work I did for the Taruma videos. Hopefully those videos are very straightforward, as the process for creating those videos was a lot more technical and required a lot more time compared to something like the Escazú comic, where you're kind of just copying and pasting and rearranging images. Regardless, I was a beginner, as I have to iterate continuously, so even if the Taruma videos look very daunting and it sounds daunting, if I could do it, then anybody could do it.